Hi. Welcome back to my channel. In our channel, we are vlogging through Ram, sign of Ikshvaku. In the previous video, we read till chapter 5. So let's see what happens in chapter 6. So in chapter 6, we see that it's dawn in the Gurukul, and all the four princes have already woken up, swept the Gurukul, bathed, cooked, and even completed their morning prayers. And now they are sitting in a semicircular formation in front of Vashisht for their morning lesson. Vashisht is sitting on a raised platform of a banyan tree, and he is sitting in the lotus formation or Padmashan. And all the Gurukul pupils, they are reciting the Guru Strotam or the hymn to praise the Guru. And when the hymn ends, Vashisht, out of tradition, says this: "May my knowledge grow within you, and may you one day become my teacher." So the class is going to start, and Ram, Lakshman, Bharat, and Shatrughan took their allotted seats. And 13 years have passed since that battle between Dashrath and Ravan. And Ram is 13 years old, and both Ram and Bharat are showing signs of adolescence. This is what it says. Their voices had begun to break and drop in pitch. Faint signs of moustache had made an appearance on their upper lips. They had suddenly shot up in height, even as their boyish bodies had begun to develop lean muscles. And on the other hand, Lakshman and Shatrughan had grown up a little more. These four princes had learned all the basics they need to learn. History, science, they have learned the language Sanskrit. So Vashisht knew that the groundwork is done. Vashisht now drops a question in his class: "Do you know the origins of our civilization?" And Lakshman just shot up his hand and said, "The universe itself began with..." So Vashisht stops him. "No, Paurav, I'm not asking about the universe. My question is about the civilization. And by civilization, I mean the Vedic people of this yug." So Ram and Bharat, after hearing the question properly, instinctively turns to Shatrughan because Shatrughan was the intellectual one and he knew things. Shatrughan starts answering that the civilization goes back to the time of Lord Manu, who was a prince of the Pandya dynasty thousands of years ago. Bharat kind of turns to Ram and said, "Teacher's pet." And Vashisht saw it. So Vashisht says, "Do you have to add something?" And Bharat is like, "No, Guruji." And then he asks Naladartak or Shatrughan to continue what he was saying. Shatrughan now continues that ages and ages ago, all this land was covered in ice. Large portions of the land were in the solid form, and the water level was much lower than we see it today. So Vashisht says, "Yes, that is called the ice age." And Shatrughan continues that as the sea levels were lower, the Indian landmass extended even more. The Lankan king Ravan's land was joined to India. Two great civilizations existed in India during the Ice Age. One was in southeast India called the Sangam Tamil, and it also included Lanka with it, along with the lands that are underwater right now. River Kaveri was broader and longer at that time, and this rich dynasty was ruled by the Pandya kings. He then adds more that the other civilization was called Dwarka, which was on the Gujarat Konkan region. It was ruled by the Yadav dynasty or the descendants of Yadu. By the end of Ice Age, sea levels increased drastically. Both the civilizations, Sangam Tamil and Dwarka, were destroyed. The survivors traveled with Lord Manu up north, and they started a civilization there. These people called themselves the people of Vidya or the Vedic people. And Shatrughan then adds that we are their proud descendants. So Vashisht says, "Very good, Naladartak." And Vashisht also adds that even though it appears like the Ice Age ended abruptly, it wasn't even abrupt at all. The people during that time saw the signs, they knew what would happen, and yet again they did not take any step to save themselves when the time comes. So Vashish then again says that such great civilizations, they were knowledgeable people, they were intelligent. Mother Earth had shown them several signs that how this age was going to end. And yet again, with all that intellect and all that technology, they did not take any step that would help them survive. Why do you think they did not take any step? So Lakshman just shot his hand and said, because they were lazy. And Vashish says, only if you would think before answering, Gaurav. And Vashish then again says to Lakshman that you have to think. Thinking is very important, Gaurav. You have to think before answering. It is more important than to be right, than to be first. Ram now gets into the conversation and he asked a question to Vashish. Guruji, you are saying that they had all the time and they knew the signs. So did they decode those signs? And Vashisht said yes, they had. So Ram again asks that did they share this signs to the royalty? And Vashisht said yes. Now Ram again says that was Lord Manu a king or a prince? So Vashisht informs that Lord Manu was the youngest of the prince. So Ram just gave his conclusion that in the presence of the king, when somebody else had to take responsibility of the people, that means that the king was incapable. He was a bad king. Bad leadership was the reason behind Sangam Tamil and Dwarka's downfall. Now Vashisht asks that, so do you think that a bad king is a bad man? To this Bharat says, no. Even severely honorable men prove themselves to be poor in terms of leadership. And sometimes men of questionable character become incredible leaders. Vashish then says, absolutely. A king's professional life has nothing to do with his personal life. In the public, a king's work is to provide and protect his people. But personally, he can be anything. So Bharat agreed, true. Now Vashish drops this incredible question. So do you think that this makes Ravan a good king for his people? And the Gurukul now has absolute silence. Ram wouldn't answer, it's very obvious, because it is because of this particular king, his life is a disaster. No matter how good a person he becomes, no matter whatever he is, nobody in Ayodhya is going to look at him in any other way, but just a mishappening. So Bharat finally answers this question, that we might not agree, but Ravan is a very good king, and he is loved by his people. He has brought prosperity through maritime trading. Whatever he does, he has it under control, and he is doing for his people. He has turned Lanka into golden Lanka, so yes, he is a good king. Now Vashisht adds another question. So what about a king who is a good man but has gone into depression? He has transferred his own suffering among his people. His people suffer because he is suffering. Does this make him a good man? So now it was obvious who Vashisht was referring to. But the students, they remained quiet. They were very afraid to answer that question. But finally, Bharat raises his hand and says, no, he's not a good king. And Vashisht nods, and in his mind he says, trust the boldness of a born rebel. And then he just ends his class by saying that is it for today. In the second part of the chapter, we see that the four princes are out on their fortnightly forest expedition. What they do is they tend to injured animals. No, they do not interfere in a hunting process, but if they come across an animal that is hurt, they tend to them. And Bharat and Ram, they have found this injured rabbit and they have anesthetized it. They have cleaned the wound with that medicine, and there was this splinter of wood stuck in the paw, and now it was all fine, and soon that rabbit will wake up. Bharat has put Jatiali medicine and forgot to put the neem leaf. If you don't put neem leaf on a Jatiali, the medicine won't work. So Shatrughan reminded this, and Lakshman doesn't care. He's standing very far and he's throwing stones at a tree. He's living. Ram, in a very contemplative way, says that by doing this, do we actually help these animals, or are we just assuaging our conscience? So Bharat says we are assuaging our conscience, but it's a good thing. At least we are listening to our conscience. And Ram asks, why are you so cynical? And Bharat says, why are you not cynical at all? So they just left that place and started walking, and both Ram and Bharat start discussing on this cynical and non-cynical matter. So Bharat says that there is so much viciousness in this world. The people are so cruel that sometimes I think that it would have been better if the world didn't have humans at all. So Ram says that is too much. We are not that bad. Bharat then says that think about rules. Asking some people to follow some rules is not worth it. Bharat then continues that asking people to follow some rules or laws does not make sense, because most people will only be driven by interest and not some mere laws. So Ram says, no, Bharat, there are people who respond to goodness. Now Bharat says, yes, there is, but not all. Ram again says that Lord Rudra led the people selflessly, didn't they? And Bharat says, yes, several people followed, but not because of Lord Rudra, but because they had their self-interest. So Ram says, no, Bharat, we cannot agree together on this matter. I know that. So Bharat says, I know we won't agree, but I still love you. So Ram then changes the topic and asks, so how was your holiday? So Bharat's maternal relatives were in Ayodhya, so he had to go there and visit them. So that's why Ram is asking that how was his holiday? And Bharat says, you know how the holidays go. You know it pretty well that I don't like it there. Now Bharat doesn't like holidays because he has to go back to his mother. And Kaikeyi is this stern woman who keeps questioning Bharat with so many things, and she just keeps him for only herself. She doesn't even like it when Bharat mixes with his brothers. However, this holiday was pretty much better because the relatives were there and his mother wasn't being able to just confine him to herself. And Ram says, don't say like that. He's your mother. Ram knew that how his stepmother was. But that's how she is. She has had her own share of frustrations. I know, but I could do with a little love, Dada. I still remember when I was 3 years old and this glass of milk slipped from my hand and mother slapped me in front of the maids. I was young, my hands were small, and the glass was too big, so it just slipped. Why did she have to slap me in front of the maids? So Ram said, you remember stuff from 3 years of age? I thought I was the only one who keeps remembering things. Now Kaikeyi had all these frustrations piled up in her because she was the brightest among all of Ashwapati's children. Being the brightest didn't do her much good. Even Ashwapati hated the fact that Kaikeyi was better than his son Yudhajit. And Ram sometimes feels appalled that why are women not given the value they deserve? And hence Kaikeyi the mother has this huge sort of expectations from his son, Bharat. Bharat still continues that I wish I had a mother like you. She would have loved me so much and she would have loved me unconditionally. But Ram had this realization that something was going on in Bharat's mind. So he just asks, what is it, Bharat? So Bharat said that, have you given a thought about what Guruji taught us today? So Ram says that this is treason. I refuse to entertain such thoughts. So Bharat says treason, to think for the good of our country. Then Ram says that he's our father. We can't think of him like that. Now Bharat asks, do you think he's a good king? Now Ram says that it is clearly stated in Manusmriti that a son should not talk about. Now Bharat interrupts, just leave the law for a moment. I have read the Manusmriti as well. I just want to know what you think, Dada. Now Ram says, all I think is that the law needs to be followed. Bharat replies, really? That is all you have to say? So Ram says that I know you might not like this, but if laws are obeyed diligently, come what may, there will come a time that a greater society arises. Now Bharat says to Ram that Dada, nobody in Ayodhya cares about a single law. We live in a civilization that is in the advanced state of decay. We are the most hypocritical people in the world, Dada. We criticize others for their corruptions. We just forget to notice our own dishonesties. We question people for their wrongdoings, and we are just blind for our own misdeeds, big or small. We keep on blaming that he was a bad king, he was cruel to us, and yet again we forget that we were the people who started the mess. So Ram asks that how do you think this can be changed? So Bharat says that this attitude is basic human nature. We would rather blame somebody else than accept our ill doings. I'm telling you this, Dada, and I'll tell you this always, that we need a king who can create this set of rules or set of laws that people will follow not by force but by choice. And this will harness even the selfish nature among humans for a better society. Now, Bharat keeps on saying that freedom is an ally if used with wisdom. Ram protests that freedom can never be an ally of law. If there is freedom, there cannot be law. Freedom means doing what you desire. Law means there are this particular paradigms you follow. So this is what Bharat says. The law is and always will be an ass. It's a tool, a means to an end. Ram just laughs out heartily and the conversation ends there. Bharat again turns to Ram and says that you believe that we need an inspirational leader who will inspire the people so much that they themselves will be able to find the good in themselves. Do you think Father lives up to this belief? Ram obviously chose not to reply, and Bharat says, let it be, Dada, let it be. Ram was thinking, but he was not ready to accept that they were actually having rebellious thoughts about their father. Shatrughan, however, was listening to this conversation and he had this realization that Ram is too idealistic. Bharat, on the other hand, is practical and real. That was the end of chapter 6. To know what happens in the next chapter, keep watching. Till then, bye bye.